Hi, just a quick note, I am Canadian, so all of the prices will be in Canadian. I've made this handy dandy little graph to describe that to you. Keep in mind that certain countries like the UK, our prices are universal despite a dollar difference. Getting screwed a little bit, guys. The idea of doing game reviews has been kicking around my mind for a while, but I wasn't sure if I could really bring anything new to the table, and this is not a plea for pity, so don't do that in the comments, but I'm not sure I have a likable enough persona for it. But we're gonna give this a crack, and I'll give y'all something to rage about apparently. And also I think I have a bit of a spin I'm going to put on near the end. Okay, well, I saw Balan Wonderworld at EB Games, which is pretty much Canadian GameStop. I believe it's even owned by the same company, and I was really charmed with the look of Balan. Just to me, Balan looks a lot like NiGHTS. I'm going to use the second game just to drive it home. So this is the second NiGHTS game, and this is Balan. So there's a reason for that. They're both Yuji Naka works, and I'm a fan. Like, a really big fan. No, not that kind of fan. So I waited patiently because although I'm a fan of Yuji, even game developers I like are capable of making a game that is not to my taste. And, well, then the internet came in and they started dunking on Balan Wonderworld hard. First of all, this is not sponsored. I don't have that kind of pull, but I would like to give a shout out to the Edmonton Public Library. Because of our award-winning library, I can rent video games for free, which is why my review is going to be somewhat slanted, or if you like, won't be influenced by how much I spent on the game. And that's also why, although this is a Switch title, it has a weird box because our library does that. So this game initially was $80 for a hard copy and $50 for a download. It has since dropped to a more sensible $35. You can usually get it for $35, maybe $40, depending on where you're buying it from. To begin with, the game is a throwback 3D platformer at heart, and when you look at games that are its contemporaries like Yooka-Laylee or Hat in Time, they're indie releases and asking for approximately $50 for a hard copy or $30 to $40 for a download. Being a fan of this genre and of Yuji's work, I thought that this game had got some of those elements right and did them really well. Aesthetically, this game pleases me. The worlds are colorful and filled with life. I like the costume designs. It has a nice cartoon look to it. And from a visual standpoint, I would say this game is Yuji Naka screaming, "Please, let me work on another NiGHTS game. I want my IP back." There are tons of NiGHTS callbacks, from a clock tower, the look and movement of Balan, the villain looks like Riala 2.0, the kids have a cartoon aesthetic, some of the sound effects are from NiGHTS, the eggs look like the Nighttopian eggs, even the storyline is about people whose passions have turned into a source of anxiety. The music, done by Ryo Yamazaki and Hironori Anazawa, also reminded me of Tomoko Sasaki's Nights into Dream scores, maybe even some of Copeland's Spyro work. Now, to get to the gameplay, as I mentioned, this game is a 3D platformer at heart. There are some puzzle elements thrown in there, and most of those puzzle elements deal with the costumes, which you use to get other collectibles, especially the statues, which can open up more levels. This is something that I could see that was done really well, the collecting aspect. The gems were put in place to guide you to different areas so you knew that you were on the right track. The other thing is, a lot of the times if it was a harder to reach area or something that you had to dig around a bit more, you would get a rarer collectible like an egg or one of the Balan statues. Going back to knights. Did I mention I really like this first game? In Knights there was a breeding mini-game for the Knightopians. This seemed to be a concept explored in Sonic Adventure with the Chows. And here we have their Tims. As a Canuck, I actually don't understand what the obsession with Tims is. They look like Kirby's and they make gizmo noises. Also, they reproduce via cannibalism. Now we get to the not so good parts. Some of the ideas feel like they should have been left in the past. Don't get me wrong, you can still pass a level with the basics, but the backtracking elements can feel a bit like artificial padding. Think like Donkey Kong 64 with the different primates to get to different areas. That's what I'm talking about. The switching of costumes is a novel idea that could have worked great for the puzzle-solving aspects, but ended up being a bone of contention for many. Although they give you places to switch out of the costumes, this also feels like needless padding. One of the biggest sources of annoyance for me was sometimes you'd end up with a costume that had no defenses when you were fighting, and a good deal of the costumes you can't even do a basic jump. So you'd be trying to fight on a tricky bit of platforming, and you would end up falling to your death or get stomped on because of the costume you were wearing. Wow, it's like going to conventions all over again. With all of that, you can only keep 3 costumes on quick draw at any given time. If that weren't enough, another bone of contention I have to add in here is a lot of times I would need a certain costume and I would have to backtrack to a level to get that costume, and you'd have to replay a level to get the costume. That was tedious. Finally, there's Balan themselves. With all the comparisons to Knights, I feel Balan might have been cut out as a playable character, because even in the timing bonus sections, you don't really play as Balan. There feels like a large disconnect between the character and the game itself. They're not a villain, but they're not a properly playable character either, which is odd to me because they're right on the box. I didn't really care for the dance sequences at the end of the levels. Most of the cutscenes felt a little wooden. To their defense/credit, they are trying to tell the story devoid of dialogue. Another Knights callback. So that is amicable, but still a bit odd by today's standards. With that in mind, the game has its problems, but is not a lost cause, and it's not the dumpster fire many seem to want us to believe it is. That being said, potential does not equal greatness. So with that in mind, here's what I would do to fix Balan Wonderworld. So these shall be mentioned in the highest priority to the lowest. So they lowered the price of this game, which was a good move, because originally, as I mentioned, this was $80 for a hard copy of the game. Now it's usually sitting around $35 to $40. We will see if that works and helps them out. The damage might have already been done. Item 2, give all of the costumes basic moves. I was thinking something similar to Klonoa, where you can jump with all of the costumes, but another action button would be the action that that costume is meant to do. This way, if you ever did end up in an enemy attack, you wouldn't have to be like, oh quick, switch, I need something that I can fight these characters with. Item 3, instead of the gems feeding the Tims, have them be currency to buy more copies of the costumes. Maybe a shop in the hub world, and we can even make it where you get the first copy of the costume for free, but it was a real pain to have to backtrack to go and get like the deer costume or the kitty costume things like that. Item 4. Incorporate Balan into the gameplay. So, as I mentioned, Balan, he moves a lot like knights, and it would be very difficult to do that in this game without getting sued by Sega, because despite Yuji Naka being credited as Knight's creator, well, Sega has rights and could sue him for doing this. So for Balan, I decided to do 2 birds with 1 stone, taking influence from his timing sections. At the end of the boss battles, where there is that weird dance sequence, make it a bonus level with a rhythm mini game with Balan leading the pack. The controls are responsive enough, and Sega alum have been good with rhythm-based games. Even Naka himself worked on the original Samba de Amigo. And for my final fix-it suggestion, a nitpick. Balan Wonderland! As I mentioned, this game is not bad, but it does need some refining. I recently picked up my own copy after the price drop because I do want to support Yuji Naka. I feel like Yuji Naka has endless creativity, and he really defined Sega's golden years. This man was once Miyamoto's contemporary, to the point Miyamoto had wished that he was the creator of Knights. And unfortunately, with the treatment of many of Naka's IPs, me too, buddy, me too. Where's my awesome Knight's hat? Why? Why must you take these things from me?